Hi there. I am Leslie Good with the St. Johns County Public Library System, and I am very fortunate to be speaking with Alyssa Carson today. Alyssa has a very impressive background, and she definitely has an impressive future. Alyssa, good morning. Hello.
Hi, nice to speak to you.
Nice talking with you, and thank you again for taking the time. St. Johns County Public Library System was selected as a NASA at My Library partner back in 2017, and we were one of 75 nationwide. And our mission is to get STEM activities and subjects out to as many people as possible, a diverse audience. And the STEM is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And Alyssa Carson has quite the background in all. She went on a road trip a few years ago, and I just wanted to ask you how that was.
Yeah, totally. No, I mean, obviously, this NASA at My Library is such an amazing idea to kind of get that idea of STEM out to so many people. I had somewhat of a similar idea of wanting to talk about STEM and space. Once I started getting into a little bit more of speaking and teaching kids, I really wanted to do more of it. So a few years ago, we did almost like a Louisiana tour. So basically, we went to all 64 parishes, just like counties around Louisiana. And for the most part, we had some other ones, but for the most part, they were mainly libraries that we went to. So went and visited just about most of the public libraries here in Louisiana, and was able to go and speak to a group of kids there, or whoever happened to be there at the time, depending on the situation. And so that was a really awesome experience to be able to kind of give back a little bit to the kids of Louisiana.
Well, I'm telling you, you are inspiring all of us. So I'm thinking you're going to have a lot of kids joining you with that Mars generation. In fact, we have a question from one of our patrons, and I was looking over your social media sites last night, and the comment fields are just full of young and old alike that are just inspired by what you do, and they want to be or their dream is the same and they want to go to Mars. So this young lady, I wanted to share this question with you.
Hi Alyssa, I'm Zoe. How do you think we're going to prevent the impact for astronauts when they travel? How do you think we're going to prevent space junk from hitting them?
Yeah, Zoe, well, that is a wonderful question to think of. Obviously, we do have a fair bit of space junk that is up in space, and all that can be super dangerous if it happens to come close to you or happens to hit you. It can cause some pretty crazy damage. So basically, when the astronauts are on the International Space Station, the International Space Station has its set orbit. We know its orbit, we know where it's going to be at all times, basically, because it's constantly circling the Earth in the same spot. And typically with large pieces of space junk, we actually track those. So there are actually facilities that track anywhere from, an old rocket down to, a screw. And all those pieces that we are aware of are actually tracked. And so if something were to happen, or we see that there's a trajectory coming into play, we try our best to either move it if that's possible and those kinds of things to kind of avoid those issues. But for the most part, it's tracked and everything's on those set orbits, so they're not really changing all the time. So typically, if it's not going to hit it today, it probably won't hit it tomorrow.
Space camp and all of the STEM subjects, like I said, you have such an impressive background. You speak, is it 5 languages?
4 languages, decently.
And that's great because I know on the International Space Station, it is international, and having that background certainly helps you to communicate, which is extremely important in space.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I never necessarily got the languages because of space and all. Actually, my dad he was a freelance videographer, so he had traveled a lot in his lifetime. And so he always thought, being able to learn languages at a young age was super helpful just because of how much he traveled and knew how much that would have benefited him, and being able to speak other languages. So that's kind of why I went to the school that I did and started learning the languages. But it totally is, important, looking at maybe the International Space Station, or even possibly as we look towards a mission to Mars, ideally there's going to be more collaboration within the space agencies and that kind of thing. And of course, we're not always going to be speaking foreign languages, but, sometimes it is nice to have that relationship with someone in their native language to make the relationship better, have a better connection to them.
That is great. And you mentioned your father, and I had read an article that, said when you were 3, you came to him asking all of these questions, and he just did not anticipate it was going to turn into what it did, and that you really brought him along for the ride. So that is great to have that support. And can you just tell us a little bit about what first inspired you?
Yeah, totally. I mean, kind of my dad remembers that moment of me coming up and, asking him these questions just because it was kind of a bizarre situation. Like I said, we think it was around 3 or so, but we weren't really paying attention, because at that point we didn't necessarily care. We thought it was just another moment. And so looking back, kind of our best guess as to what could have started all of this is actually an episode of the Backyardigans, that was on Nickelodeon. And basically the show has these imaginary missions, or these imaginary adventures that they do in their backyard. And so they did have a Mission to Mars episode that aired, and I actually had the poster for that episode, the Backyardigans Mission to Mars. And so one day we were like, maybe that's it. It's really the only place we could think of to where I would have learned the word Mars. It's not like it was something we talked about frequently. So it was definitely bizarre, but my dad basically just told me, you can do what you want to do. Obviously, it wasn't something he thought I'd continue doing, or necessarily his first choice career for me to go into. My dad thought I would follow in his footsteps and go into videography or something. That's what he was hoping for. But yeah, I definitely drug him the complete opposite direction, and now he knows more about space than he ever thought he would. So.
Well, it is a vast subject, so it's very interesting, and how great to have a father that is encouraging. Literally, this is like, to the moon and beyond.
Right.
We did, since robotics is so important, especially when you're talking about space, we had a program back in 2018. It was the Insight Landing. And it was a successful mission. We all were cheering in the room. There was a young man who joined us for that program. His name's Rylan. And I just wanted to show you, he is a NASA fan. So he also is going to be part of that Mars generation. But since robotics is so important, and I know you've got a pretty extensive background in that as well.
Before we do anything, I guess human related, we have done everything, I guess, in terms of robotics first. So, we're at the point now where, for example, in the International Space Station, sometimes if there's a small problem outside, we can just send a robot rather than gearing up an entire person in a spacesuit and going through that whole process. Also, looking at things like going to Mars, we've sent countless rovers and probes and satellites and things like that. So we really do have to have a strong understanding of robotics, and what we can actually benefit off of that. And of course, it's been a huge help in all the different sciences that we've done in space so far. But really the advantage to having humans there is that it can move or go a lot faster than the robotics that we do have going. And that's mainly just because of the time difference and the time delay that it takes, for example, to reach Mars, which could possibly be 15 minutes. A rover over there is going to take quite some time to do a very simple task. If each time we tell it to do something, it has to wait 15 minutes to do it, and then wait another 15 minutes to tell us that it has done that. So it is a pretty slow process, but we've definitely been able to accomplish some pretty amazing things that we wouldn't have been able to otherwise.
And tying into the robotics, I had read that I guess you hosted a Girls Who Code or were a speaker to that.
Yeah, yeah, no, totally. I mean, I've done several events now and dealing with girls in programming and coding and things like that. It's definitely a super important field that we have in the STEM industry. And it's something, really interesting that so many kids can really get into because, with coding and programming and robotics really in general, you get to kind of decide what you want it to do. You have your entire imagination up there and you're able to program it to do what you want or build it how you want it. So there's a whole lot of options there for the kids to really kind of just get into. So I think that's one of the super exciting things about getting into robotics or even programming.
Well, and libraries worldwide are doing robotics, they're doing the coding, lots of STEM activities. So they're engaging their communities with those STEM subjects.
Wonderful.
And then I saw that you are doing a virtual space camp later today.
Yeah, totally. So this is kind of a new thing that basically, so it's a radio station and they want to kind of extend and do kind of more like a video thing to engage more kids in terms of like a virtual space camp. So obviously right now, Space Camp is definitely operating right now at really small capacities, and I think they're officially closing down the camp again in September from kids going. So I do know how wonderful Space Camp was for me in terms of figuring out what I wanted to do, encouraging my own dream or encouraging my own passion for space and kind of building on that. So I'm really excited to see how we're going to work it out virtually and try to see if we can get some kids to have that same experience through a computer screen.
In a way, I guess it's great that, you know, when you're in space, things are not always going to go the way you want. And in today's kind of environment, we all are just kind of figuring things out. So that there's even a virtual space camp is still pretty cool.
Yeah, no, totally. It's pretty crazy how the way, we've been able to switch everything online, but, in situations you have to adapt and you have to be able to work just as well in those new conditions. And, that's something that astronauts have to be able to do.
And space camps, Netflix has a documentary that I have watched a couple of times. I refreshed my memory and watched it yesterday, Mars Generation. And I love that it includes your generation and your dreams to go to Mars and make that an actuality. But it also talks about the history of NASA and space travel. So it's a documentary great for all ages. How did you feel about that?
Yeah, no, it was pretty awesome. It was definitely a pretty cool experience. So they ended up following a team at Space Camp for a good bit of the time to really showcase all the fun aspects of Space Camp, just to show like something that you could be able to do if you were to go there, or even just learning from, the videos that you are shown. But it was really cool to almost, tie in some of the knowledge that I've learned into what they were talking about and being able to contribute in that way. And so, yeah, it was really cool to be able to kind of hang out with those kids a little bit who were in camp, even though I wasn't. I was kind of in camp, not really. I'm just kind of hanging out. So it was pretty fun.
Well, and I loved the focus on teamwork. You know, none of us get to where we're going by ourselves. And I had seen that NASA really is got a great focus on teamwork right now. And there was a quote that said, if you've got a strong team, you can survive anything. And so I love that that space camp really focuses on teamwork. And you're going to need that when you go to Mars.
Yeah, totally. I mean, in the space industry, it is all about teamwork. Typically, for to send one astronaut to space, it takes tens of thousands of people to actually put every single component together, to test every part, to prepare everything that needs to be prepared, to train the astronauts. All of those roles really all come into play to be able to do what we do in the space industry. And so it has been really amazing to kind of see how that team is and see how well they work together. Meeting people who actually work at NASA is so amazing because you see their passion for what they're doing, and you see how they all just kind of come together to do incredible things like build new powerful rockets. And so it's pretty inspiring to see that.
How long, I guess, in this current day in technology, would it take to get to Mars?
Yeah, totally. So right now with our current technology, we're looking at it taking about 6 months to actually get there. However, we do know that we already have the technology to reduce it down to 6 weeks. So that would be with a new plasma engine. However, that engine needs to go through like a few more tests, safety tests, and that kind of thing. We really want to work out everything to be sure it's safe for the astronauts and things like that to be able to go to Mars. So probably the first couple of missions will use kind of the older engines that will take 6 months, but we should soon adapt to changing it to 6 weeks since we kind of already know how that it could be done.
That is incredible. So, and then the return trip timed right.
Right, yeah, no, that return trip is probably going to be about the same amount of time. So basically, Mars and the Earth, they both don't orbit in perfect circles. So sometimes Mars is really far away, sometimes Mars is really close to us. So basically, we have to wait for Mars to kind of come back around and be nice and close to us again. So that way the return trip isn't super long.
Okay. Well, this is just exciting. And this Mars generation, it's as exciting, if not more, as exploring the moon was, back in the 60s. And there was a documentary called In the Shadow of the Moon. And the subtitle is Remember When the Whole World Looked Up. And with the Mars generation now, you all are helping us to look up again. So thank you.
Yeah, no, totally. I like to think, there has been basically, a generation that was able to witness people land on the moon, which was really amazing. But I definitely do think now it's time, and this generation will be the generation to actually witness someone step foot on Mars or be a part of it in some way. I do think that we are at that point. Obviously, all the work that we've done since the moon has been really amazing, building the entire International Space Station, the entire shuttle program, and everything that we've done. But I definitely think it's time to start looking further again, with the plans of going back to the moon and then on to Mars are all super exciting. So, in general, I do think that most things that we do in the space industry comes off of public interest. And so it's really exciting to see the public getting excited and interested in Mars and space and that kind of thing. Because with that drive and with that interest, we'll be able to actually do it.
Well, we here in St. Johns County are cheering on your future missions and your continued success. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you so much.
We do have a limited quantity of NASA stickers, so if you would like one, please email me. And also fill out the NASA at My Library survey that is included in the area below.